Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's Dina Kalmeta here. And for today's news, I have quite a few headlines I wanted to share with you. But I first want to talk about Israel because, again, she is in the middle of a global shaking. For months, I have reported that France and Saudi Arabia have tried to get other nations together and to agree with them to create a Palestinian state and also suggest a two-state solution. But due to unfortunate events, those dates have been pushed off further and further out. Well, finally they set a date, and it's in September. Very interesting timing. At the UN. France has announced plans to formally recognize a Palestinian state this September during the United Nations General Assembly, a move that President Macron framed as a reaffirmation of France's long-standing commitment to a just and lasting peace in the Middle East. Macron confirmed the decision in a letter to the Palestinian Authority president and posted it publicly on X, stating that he will make the solemn announcement before world leaders in New York. This decision would make France the first major Western power to recognize a Palestinian statehood, a position that has far been championed mainly by smaller, more critical of Israel nations. Macron hopes that the declaration will help reignite momentum for a two-state solution and influence other nations still undecided on the matter. But the response from Israel was swift and furious. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the move and warned that a Palestinian state under current conditions would pose a dire threat to Israel's security. Israeli officials across the political spectrum denounced the decision, calling it a betrayal that undermines peace and strengthens groups like Hamas. Meanwhile, the U.S. reiterated its opposition to any recognition of a Palestinian statehood, citing concerns over its alignment with a broader U.S. foreign policy. Despite the mounting pressure, Macron is pushing forward, aiming to leverage the upcoming UN conference to sway hesitant nations, even as Israel hints at retaliatory measures, including reduced intelligence sharing and a potential annexation of the West Bank. Breitbart News is reporting that leaders in London, Rome, and Berlin rejected pressure to follow the lead of Paris in recognizing Palestine as a state. While Macron held talks with the British Prime Minister, the German Chancellor, and the Italian Premier on Friday, Macron was apparently unable to sway his fellow European leaders on the issue of a Palestinian statehood. Now, with that said, the Dutch right-wing leader Geert Wilders delivered a fierce rebuke to French President Macron's decision to recognize a Palestinian state, sarcastically suggesting that southern France could become the new Palestinian state, while declaring good luck Macron and France. He made his post on X that reached over 5 million views by Sunday. So we have to ask the question, what happens in September? One of the most prophetically significant holidays on the Jewish calendar, the Feast of Trumpets. It's the only appointed feast day where no one knows the day or the hour, because it's based on the sighting of the new moon. It begins when the trumpet sounds, but no one knows the exact moment until it happens. Does it sound familiar? Well, it should, because Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only." Many believe he was making a direct reference to this feast, a prophetic clue possibly, pointing to his return. This particular holiday is not just a celebration. It's a wake-up call, a time of repentance, reflection, and the sound of the shofar that stirs the hearts of God's people. We're entering a season where the spiritual and the political are colliding. What France and others are proposing may seem like politics, but through the lens of prophecy, it looks like something far more serious. God gave us a stark warning in the book of Joel, chapter 3, verse 2. He said, "I will gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Josaphat. There I will enter into judgment against them concerning my people, my inheritance Israel, for they have scattered my people among the nations and divided up my land." So obviously this is a warning from God. Do not divide his land. So, as September approaches and these world leaders come together, they may do exactly that. And it will be catastrophic for Israel and for the world. But I guess we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But I would like to switch gears and talk about what President Trump told Israel to do about Hamas. Apparently, he said to finish the job. Axios is reporting that President Trump signaled on Friday that after the breakdown in negotiations for a Gaza ceasefire and hostage deal, he believes that Israeli Prime Minister should escalate the war to get rid of Hamas. The president said Hamas didn't want to make a deal, and it's very bad. It got to the point where you have to finish the job. He also added that Israel is going to have to fight, and they are going to have to clean it up. He said you will have to get rid of Hamas. In response, Hamas has released a statement saying that we are appalled by the statements of U.S. President Trump and earlier by his U.S. Special Envoy, which contradict the mediator's assessment of Hamas's position and are inconsistent with the actual progress of negotiations that had been acknowledged by mediators, particularly in Qatar and Egypt, as they expressed satisfaction and appreciation for our serious constructive stance. He went on to claim that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government was a real obstructionist to all agreements, accusing Israeli officials of continuing to put up obstacles, deceive, and evade commitments. He then demanded that the U.S. put more pressure on Israel to seriously engage in ending the aggression and achieving a prisoner exchange deal, referring to the remaining hostages in Gaza and Palestinians in Israeli prisons. So clearly tensions have heated up in the Middle East, but it doesn't end there. It's also been reported that apparently China and Taiwan held dual war games simultaneously. China, of course, to invade Taiwan, and Taiwan to defend herself. And now the UK is also saying that they're going to help Taiwan defend herself. And then, of course, we know it's inevitable that the United States, in one way or another, is going to get pulled into this fight. But still, it doesn't end there. It's also been reported that apparently President Trump has moved up the deadline for President Putin in Ukraine to make peace. And now it's also been reported that President Putin is looking at NATO and stating that within 18 months, he'll be prepared for war. As Taiwan concluded its largest ever military exercise, annual war games designed to test the island's ability to repel a Chinese invasion, China simultaneously launched a series of back-to-back drills overtly simulating an attack and applying strategic pressure. The PLA Eastern Theater Command issued daily updates detailing scrutinized maneuvers designed to mirror and counter Taiwan's activities. Now, Taiwan's exercise, held from July 9th to the 18th, was the longest and most comprehensive iteration since its inception in 1984. It marked a significant shift towards whole-of-society defense, emphasizing joint combat operations and responses to gray zone threats. The drills featured over 22,000 reservists and incorporated both domestically developed and U.S.-supplied weapons, including Sky Sword 2 missiles, the Abraham tanks, and the HIMARS rocket systems. For the first time, the exercise was paired with the Urban Resilience Exercises, a multi-month campaign held from April through July to test Taiwan's ability to withstand a prolonged conflict through full societal participation. Now, the United States, Taiwan's principal security partner, has stepped up legislation and military support. In 2025, at least 8 Taiwan-related bills advanced in Congress, and U.S. personnel continued training Taiwan's forces. Washington has also urged regional allies like Japan and Australia to clarify their roles in the event of a conflict. The 2025 Han Kuang exercises reflect Taiwan's growing seriousness about defense, its commitment to national resilience, and alignment with U.S. expectations for regional burden sharing. It goes on finally to report that Beijing has historically used the Han Kuang Week to register displeasure with Taiwan's military assertiveness, often combining drills with economic sanctions or amphibious assault simulations. This year, however, the PLA's actions appeared more sustained and sophisticated, signaling a shift towards real-time operational synergy and a deliberate attempt to counter Taiwan's defense posture with a show of integrated force. The United Kingdom could resort to military force against China in the event of an escalation over Taiwan, according to the British Defense Secretary John Healey, though he emphasized that London continues to prefer a diplomatic resolution. Speaking to The Telegraph during a visit to Australia, Healey said that Britain would secure peace through strength if necessary, marking one of the clearest signals yet from a senior UK official regarding the possibility of a direct confrontation with Beijing. CBS News is reporting that a China-flagged research vessel was detected on Friday off the coast of Alaska. The Coast Guard reported Saturday that the Sui Long 2, an icebreaker, was detected about 290 nautical miles in the North American Arctic. The Sui Long 2 is operated by China's Polar Research Institute. The ship was in the United States' Extended Continental Shelf, or ECS, which is a portion of the continental shelf that goes beyond 200 nautical miles off the coast, according to the State Department. The ship was determined to be 130 nautical miles inside the ECS. The Coast Guard said in a news release that the U.S. has exclusive rights to conserve and manage the living and non-living resources of its ECS. Now, a Coast Guard C-13OJ Hercules, a long-range surveillance aircraft, responded to the ship. Thailand and Cambodia have agreed to hold initial talks on a ceasefire after 3 days of cross-border clashes, according to statements released Saturday by both governments and U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump wrote, "Both sides are seeking an immediate ceasefire and peace. They also want to return to the trade table with the United States, which we believe should only happen once the fighting stops. They agreed to meet immediately and to work swiftly towards a ceasefire and ultimate peace." U.S. President Trump has sharply reduced the time he set for Russia and Ukraine to agree on a ceasefire, warning that Moscow now has just 10 to 12 days to reach a deal or face sweeping new sanctions. The president said, "I'm going to set a new deadline, about 10 or 12 days from today. There's no reason to wait. I wanted to be generous, but we're just not seeing any progress." Now, President Trump has originally given the side 50 days to negotiate an end to the conflict, threatening to impose 100% tariffs on Russian imports and secondary sanctions on countries and companies that continue to do trade with Russia. That initial deadline was due to expire in early September. Trump said that he was very disappointed with the Russian president and claimed he had come close to brokering a ceasefire on 5 separate occasions. He said, "I've spoken to President Putin a lot. I've gotten along with him very well." Now, Moscow has apparently responded by reaffirming its willingness to negotiate. It said that any talks must take into account the realities on the ground and the root causes of the conflict. Russian officials have dismissed Trump's sanctions threats as counterproductive. Russia has once again threatened the West with nuclear war as the country conducted large-scale naval exercises. Footage shows the Russian Navy deploying sea drones as its warships rehearsed in the Pacific, Baltic, and Caspian Sea on Exercise July Storm. According to the Russian defense minister, 50 warships and supply vessels, 120 aircraft, 10 coastal missile systems, and 15,000 military personnel were deployed in a show of strength. The exercise comes a week after U.S. Army Europe and Africa Commander General Christopher Donahue claimed that NATO could take control of Kaliningrad, which is surrounded by the alliance, in a time frame that is unheard of and faster than we've ever been able to do. The comments then provoked a strong reaction from Putin's aide and former spy master, who accused the West of aspirations to violate Russia's sovereignty and territorial integrity by military means. He said, "We have long been aware of the West's plans for Kaliningrad. The Kaliningrad region is an integral part of Russia, and any military encroachment on it will be met with an immediate and crushing response using all the forces and means at our disposal." He went on to say that Russia has all the necessary military instruments to guarantee the security of the Kaliningrad region, as he specified that he was discussing a nuclear response. Now, in the meantime, the Polish Prime Minister concurred with the assessment of a senior U.S. general that Russian forces could be ready for a confrontation with Europe within 18 months. General Alexis Gornkowicz, the newly appointed NATO commander in Europe, said his U.S. intelligence assessments suggested that Russia could achieve operational readiness for a European conflict within the next 2 years. He warned that if China decides to launch military action against Taiwan, it is likely he will coordinate with Putin, which creates a potential for a global conflict. Now, Express News is also reporting that Putin has his eyes on another European country. The Institute for the Study of War stated in June that the Kremlin has been setting informational conditions to justify potential aggression against Moldova and the Baltic states by using an alleged need to protect its compatriots abroad. Russia also claims that these former Soviet countries are part of the Ruski Mir, the idea of the Russian world abroad. This is the same narrative specialists suggest that Putin used to justify its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. In May, experts warned that Russian security services continue to conduct hybrid operations against the U.S. and its allies in preparation for a larger future war with NATO. The signs are everywhere, you guys, and it's intensifying. No longer is war just on the horizon, but it seems as if she's getting ready to knock on our doors. And Jesus said that we would hear of wars and rumors of wars. Nation would rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. But he also said that there would be another kind of shaking, and that would be earthquakes in diverse places. Apparently, there is an earthquake that is ready to blow, and for years, it's gone unnoticed. Previously quiet fault line beneath North America is now feared to be a ticking time bomb, and experts warn it could unleash a devastating earthquake with no warning, shaking parts of the U.S. Canadian scientists have discovered that the Tintina fault, located just 12 miles from Dawson City in Yukon, has been silently building up underground pressure and may be on the verge of erupting in a massive quake. The fault runs beneath highways, rivers, and critical infrastructure and stretches into interior Alaska, raising fears it could send tremors into British Columbia, Alberta, and Montana. Dr. Michael West, state seismologist of Alaska's Earthquake Center, told the Daily Mail that this new study shows it has been quietly building towards a potentially very large earthquake. It is one of the least studied fault systems in North America, and that needs to change. One section alone is approximately 81 miles long and could generate a magnitude 7.5 earthquake or greater, strong enough to shatter roads, destroy pipelines, and trigger landslides across both Canada and the U.S. Researchers warned that the consequences could be devastating if the fault breaks, especially since the fault has been largely overlooked compared to more famous faults like the San Andreas that extended over 750 miles through California. They said the fault could break along more than 109 miles, causing strong earthquakes in northern U.S. communities, including Alaska's Fairbanks North Star Borough, potentially impacting over 125,000 people. Dr. Thurlon Finley, a recent PhD graduate from University of Victoria, said that the fault may be at a late stage of seismic cycle. It is quietly built up around 20 inches of slip that could be released in a single catastrophic event. This fault has been hiding in plain sight since it was discovered in 1912. It stayed suspiciously silent while others rumble, leaving it overlooked by quake monitors and hazard maps. But scientists now say it's a mature, slow-moving fault, the kind that stays quiet for thousands of years before suddenly unleashing a powerful quake. The most dangerous thing is not just that the fault is active. It is that no one's been paying attention to it. Apparently, parts of an ancient glacial landforms have shifted sideways by nearly 3,200 feet, providing clear evidence of powerful past earthquakes. Now, importantly, geological evidence shows that the land has not shifted in a long time, a sign that the fault has stayed locked and is steadily building pressure. That quiet period may actually be the problem. We are not good at thinking about things that happen every 12,000 years, but over that time, it builds up enough motion to create a 7.5 earthquake. And what is going on at Yellowstone? Researchers at the University of Western Ontario have uncovered over 86,000 earthquakes moving in chaotic swarms through rough young fault lines beneath Yellowstone. The findings are significantly higher than the previously known number of earthquakes in the area. The study appears in the journal Science Advances, and the authors wrote in a statement that with these new insights, we're getting closer to decoding Earth's volcanic heartbeat and improving how we predict and manage volcanic and geothermal hazards. To a larger extent, there is no systematic understanding of how one earthquake triggers another in a swarm. We can only indirectly measure space and time between events. Jesus told us in the last days that we would see earthquakes in diverse places in the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And there will be great earthquakes in various places and fearful sights and great signs from heaven. Romans chapter 8, verse 22, for we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pains together until now. So with all of these events occurring simultaneously, what does it tell us? It tells us that Jesus is coming soon. He told us in Luke 21:28 that when you begin to see these things come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. And that day is indeed fast approaching. But until then, please do leave your comments below this video. And when you have some time, come and visit us on our social media pages, as well as our website at www.cww7news.com. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, God bless and stay safe.